Now, here's why that's important. Let's say Transmission Center A informs you that the total cost is $1,500. However, Transmission Center B might quote you a lower price of $1,000, which includes everything except the hard parts or transmission case. If you decide to go with this price and don't need the hard parts or the case, you could make out quite well. But the problem is, you're not going to know if you need hard parts until they start working on your transmission. At this point, which do you choose? A higher guaranteed price or a lower price with qualifiers? Here's how you make it work to your advantage. Inform the transmission specialist at Center B that you have a price from Center A that is guaranteed not to exceed $1,500. Ask Center B if they'll guarantee in writing that if the hard parts are necessary, Center B's price will not exceed the guaranteed $1,500 price quoted by Center A. If Center B agrees, then you're guaranteed the low price of $1,000 if you don't need the hard parts, and you're also guaranteed the price won't exceed $1,500 if you do need the hard parts. Ask them about the warranty. Are the parts and labor covered? How many months and how many miles are covered? This is the best possible way to price because you absolutely, positively know how much the total job will cost before repairs are made. Now, let's discuss standard transmissions. When a standard transmission is having difficulties, most likely it's still drivable. If your car is not making a lot of noise, try to take it to several transmission centers to evaluate whether it's a transmission problem. And don't just accept the first diagnosis. If the transmission gears lock and the car will not move, then you'll be doing all price comparisons by telephone. Many places are going to tell you that the only way to determine the amount of damage to your car's transmission and how much repairs will cost is to have the car towed to a center and allow a specialist to remove the transmission and disassemble it. That's one way to do it, but there's usually a fee for this transmission inspection. Make sure that this fee includes reassembling the transmission and reinstalling it in the car. You don't want to get stuck paying an additional fee to have your transmission reassembled before you can take it to another shop for yet another diagnosis. Now, I'm going to give you a way to save money that the transmission centers do not want you to know. But listen carefully. Many centers do not rebuild standard transmissions themselves, but rather they subcontract the work to shops that do not deal directly with the public. The transmission centers choose this route for several reasons. One, they don't have to stock the inventory for standard transmissions, which make up only about 10 to 15% of a center's business. Number two, they don't have to hire a specialist who doesn't know how to build anything but standard transmissions. And number three, there simply is not as much profit to be made in standard transmission repairs as there is in automatic transmissions. And many centers think that they'll lose business if they admit they do not repair standard transmissions on the premises. But, and this is a tip that can save you a whole lot of money, you want to go to a center that subcontracts its standard transmission work. Here's the reason why. You can ask the center to call the subcontractor and get the price for repairs based on the malfunctions that you've described on the phone. By going this route, you're saving the cost of the teardown and inspection fee and getting a realistic price for repairs on your standard transmission. Armed with this information, you can now call several other transmission centers and repeat these questions. Is the standard transmission repair done on the premises or subcontracted out? Based on the problems you're describing, will the center call their subcontractor to get a price? By shopping this way and writing down all your prices, you'll be able to see which transmission center has the least markup on repairs. Now bear in mind, this price is only for the transmission repair. It does not cover the cost of labor to remove and reinstall the transmission or the fluid for the transmission. And it does not cover the cost to replace the clutch if it's needed. Be sure to price out these items also. Write everything down and then compare. Now, what if Center A gives you the best price on repairs of the transmission, but their price for fluid and labor is higher than another price you've gotten? Don't be afraid to ask Center A to meet your lower price for fluid and labor. They more than likely will in order to get your business. If you have a standard transmission and you think you're having problems with your clutch, here's what you do. Drive to several transmission centers to determine if it's a clutch pressure plate and throwout bearing that needs replacement, or whether the problem is related to the clutch's hydraulic system or clutch cable. If after visiting the centers, the consensus of opinion is that your car needs a new clutch, you can go ahead and shop for price. Because there's a great deal of competition for clutch work, gas stations and general repair shops as well as transmission centers are all able to replace your standard clutch. When shopping, I recommend pricing out new dealer or new aftermarket clutch, pressure plate, and throwout bearing parts. This is the best way to go because the parts are better quality and will last longer with less problems. If money is really tight, then the third option would be remanufactured aftermarket clutch parts. To get the most accurate figure, ask the mechanic to separately price out the cost to replace the hydraulic system. You may not need to replace the system, but it's better to know the price beforehand while you're comparison shopping. If you don't, you could find yourself in the compromised position of having to pay a very high price for the hydraulic system. First, because your car is already in the shop being repaired and you can't go somewhere else for the hydraulic system. And second, since they already have given you a low price for replacing the clutch parts, they might try to charge a higher price for the hydraulics. And because you don't want any last-minute surprises, make sure the prices quoted for the clutch include fresh fluids and flywheel resurfacing. But we're not finished yet. You might be able to save a lot of money by having someone else pay for all or part of your transmission repair costs. In the good old days, transmissions lasted well over 100,000 miles before you'd have a problem. But now we're seeing cars with transmission problems as early as 1,000 miles. Often they're cars of identical make and model from the same manufacturer. Wouldn't it be great if you knew about all the problems that the automobile manufacturer has had with your model car? Yes, it would, because then you'd be in a position to negotiate the repair. So here's something you can do. Call several transmission centers and ask if the transmission in your car has a higher than average failure rate. If you find that it's on the hit parade, then you can call the National Highway Traffic and Safety Administration, also known as NHTSA. All automobile manufacturers that sell cars in the United States have to send copies of their technical service bulletins, also known as TSBs, to NHTSA. These bulletins inform the service departments at the dealership about existing problems with particular components or parts, and it instructs the technicians in how to correct the problems. You can get copies of these bulletins by calling NHTSA at 1-800-445-0197 and following the directions given by the pre-recorded message. There is a service charge of $20 to $40 depending on the amount of bulletins that you order, but the bulletins will supply you with the evidence you need to go to the dealer and demand help with repairs.